Folks, this is Kentucky Fathers. I'm your host, Corbin. And some of you who have listened to some of my broadcasts in the past know that, this is a podcast about fathers and fatherhood. And hopefully, if you're a father today, you'll be a better father today than what you were yesterday after listening to a few of our shows. I have with me a very special man, Mr. Dan Orman. He is a brother who's with me in a weekly Christian men's meeting, discipleship. We are discipled by some very powerful Christian men. And, before I started the show, I was just talking to the brother about what I'm trying to accomplish with this podcast and why it just seems like here in the United States, at least at the present time in our culture, there's not enough discussion about fathers and fatherhood. And I definitely wanted to bring on this brother because some of the things he shared with me, we shared with all of us in our men's group. And this is Mr. Dan Orman. Brother, thank you for coming on, man.
Good to be here, my brother. Good to be here, and good to be here with you and the good work you're doing, Corbin.
So we got just about 15 minutes or so, despite the fact we could probably sit around and talk about this for like some hours, some hours. So, who knows, maybe if you feel moved, we'd love to have you come back on again sometime. But brother, please start sharing with us what you feel comfortable in sharing about your father.
Corbin, this is such an interesting angle to take because I think as men, as Christian men, relationships sometimes with dad can be difficult. My father, Dawson Orman, was a very special man. He was born October 27th of 1927 and passed away at age 69 on 7:40 in the morning on April 27th. And I remember that time so clearly because I was sitting with him. And we are days away from that 24th anniversary of his passing. And I remember the moment, the time of day that he passed. It was a Sunday morning. And he had a short bout with lung cancer and died 6 months to the day after his diagnosis. And that 6 months was a time period that one would think, man, I bet you just took time and got really close to your dad. And even though we had a very close relationship for those years, I was 36 years old when he passed away. I'm 60 now, pushing 61. So it's really interesting. So much of my life has been without him. But it has allowed me that, and late in life that I met Jesus Christ and accepted him as my Lord and Savior. It's caused it's caused me, Corbin, to take a really interesting walk with my father after his passing from this place.
Wow.
I followed in his footsteps professionally. He was a longtime school administrator. I was a longtime school administrator, still in the school business. Even after retiring, this is my 39th or 40th year in the school business. And yet, I always think of that as being side by side with my father, when in fact, professionally, it was only about 13 years that we did that. And it's really interesting, such a dichotomy in the sense that there was Dan and Dawson, the son and father, and there was Dan and Dawson, the young educator and the old educator. And everything, like men in this country so often do, so much of what I had with my father was identified in our profession, our mutual profession. And we shared a lot of the same philosophy, of course, because I got mine from his. But when I drill down and I look at Dawson Orman, the man, and like every man, he was an imperfect man. And yet I just heard a quotation this week, probably in preparation for this conversation, unbeknownst to me. But God put a quotation in front of me through another brother. Always take it easy on your dad. He probably did the very best he could.
Yeah.
And if I'm willing to look at, Dad, why did you make this decision? Why did you tell me that? I have to be willing to allow my two grown daughters to say, Dad, why did you do this? Why did you say that? So I think as men, we grow, we do the very best we can as fathers. And it's only in hindsight that we see the mistakes so clearly. And I'm sure that was the same way with my father. But I do remember him. He taught me so much good that the bad is under the bridge and gone. And its impact may still be here. But as a Christ follower, I'm going to look at the good and I'm going to forgive anything else that happened to be there. Because, brother, that hindsight's always 20/20, and I know my own mistakes as a father and now as a grandfather. So I don't want to be held to that hindsight standard any more than he would want that. But I know that I carry gifts to this day that he gave me, and for that I will always be grateful.
Did you know, a lot of times father sons, they do a lot of sports together. Did you have a common interest in sports? Was he a coach? Did you take you to games? What kind of stuff? What kind of connections you had?
Any of the Louisville natives will remember, Corbin. Actually, Louisville natives of a certain age, I should qualify that, will remember the classic Thanksgiving Day male manual football games. My dad moved to Louisville, and at 13, 14 years old, he lived in an apartment building that's still there at 41st. It's at the southwest corner of 41st and Broadway. I was in the neighborhood about 3 weeks ago, and I drive by that building. It brings me close to him and to my mother. They were teenagers. My mother's grandmother and my dad's mother lived right down the hall from one another in that little apartment building, still an apartment building. And that was in the early 40s. And in fact, he met my mother through sports. He was sitting around the apartment like a 14-year-old boy will do, and a 16-year-old girl walked by with her tennis outfit on, heading to Shawnee Park with her tennis racket. And all of a sudden, he was looking for the old tennis racket in the apartment, and his mother, my grandmother, who died a year before he did, and to whom I was very close. What do you need that old tennis racket for? I'm just going to take up tennis this afternoon, right now. I'm going to go learn to play. And apparently the depression was gone. So he went following that little girl down to Shawnee Park and came back. And a few years later, they were married. 1947, he was in the Navy. But yes, I can remember watching Green Bay Packer games in the 1960s, just hanging out with him, and Cleveland Browns, because that's about all we got in Louisville. Where, it wasn't the days of ESPN and 94 stations at your choice. It was Green Bay Packers or it was Cleveland Browns. And I have really clear memories, ended up playing and loving football through my years. And he played at Mayo High School, is in their athletic hall, is in the Mayo High School Hall of Fame. And he can remember folding up his helmet, putting it in his pocket to walk home.
Oh, wow.
So, different eras. But I still got a thrill in high school anytime we'd play at Manual Stadium, because I knew my father had played on that field too, back in the 40s.
Wow.
So yeah, we all kinds of sports. We golfed together, not very well, but we had fun hanging out together. In fact, he was with me, Corbin, and I was driving the golf cart March 31st of 1997. A couple of my brothers and my dad, we took him out golfing. We thought the cancer was in remission. It was March 31st. We all took off work and went and played a golf match. My dad played 4 holes and got on the 5th tee, hit a ball and looked at me and said, "I'm tired. I can't go anymore." And he used to be good for about 45 holes of golf in a day.
Man.
To this day, Corbin, that 5th tee box, the 5th hole at Barren River State Park Golf Course, and I play it a lot. To this day, when my brother and I are there, I hit a golf ball off that tee box right out into the lake on purpose. And it's in honor of my dad. So there must be 1,000 golf balls out in that lake somewhere at the bottom in his honor, because that was the last golf shot he ever took. And I have a big, beautiful photograph of him that day that swinging a golf club. It was the last time we were on a golf course together. He died 3.5, 4 weeks later. So it was a gift from God that we had that day together. And that any affection for sports that came my way was probably a result of hanging out with him. He was a high school principal. He was at Shawnee Junior High back in those days, and then Highland, at that time Highland Junior High before middle schools, and then was principal at Atherton High School before becoming a deputy superintendent, first in the old Louisville system. And they merged into one Jefferson County public school system. And he was with Jefferson County Schools until his retirement in 1984. Ran the High School Principals Association, of which I was a part as a school principal. So we had that cool connection professionally as well. And yeah, he had his faults. Had a lot of faults, and he would be the first to tell you that if he were sitting here instead of me. But you know what? So do we all. And as a younger man, I used to try to hold him accountable for those faults. But that was a pretty lofty position for a young, sassy little boy to hold that view. And another thing that my introduction, that someone introducing me, and my incredible God-sent wife introducing me to Christ from that viewpoint. And actually, my wife baptized me at age 56. One thing that being a Christ follower has given me as a priceless gift is that of maturity and better vision. And I'm just thankful for the gifts that people give me rather than critical of their perceived shortcomings. And it's the same way with my father.
You had mentioned earlier, you're a father and a grandfather. What do you think? What kind of impact do you think your father had on you as a father? I mean, are there times you say to yourself, "Oh my God, I sound," you're speaking to your daughters, "Oh my God, I sound like my dad," Or are there times when, that doesn't happen? I mean, what impact do you think he had on you and your functioning, thinking as a father?
Well, I think one of those, I did, followed some of the bad habits and some of the bruises in his past, and they became mine. And, life is a series of decisions that we make. I do believe the big picture of life is made up of a whole lot of small decisions.
Mm.
And those decisions, a favorite author of mine, Steve Farrar, those decisions make character or unmake character, one or the other. And then those series of decisions are what becomes our makeup. And over the years, I had a beautiful relationship with my daughters, and probably because of some decisions that I made long, long ago, have caused a rift in our relationship. And I miss them both dearly. I don't have any contact with my daughters right now, but I know that in many ways I was a very good father. And he passed on some beautiful, beautiful lessons of fatherhood to me, and that togetherness and doing things together and spending time together. But when I thought I was doing some things that were the right things to do, work ethic and 16, 18-hour days at work and excessive, unnecessary amounts of time at work, turned out not to be so good for long-range relationships, and made some very serious mistakes as a result, which again caused a crack in our relationship, mine with my daughters, and unfortunately with my grandson, through the oldest daughter. But again, never intentionally. As I mentioned early on, the brother told me, take it easy on your fathers. They did the best they could.
Right.
And I honestly think I did the best I could at one point, but I'm fully accountable for every mistake I ever made, Corbin, and will remain that way. And sometimes, like Moses, and I don't liken myself to Moses, but his situation. Moses went 40 years hanging out at age 38, 39, 40, privileged, wealthy, probably thought pretty highly of the job he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then God swooped in and a situation occurred, and Moses had some impulsive behavior, ended up being sent to the land of Midian, which is a nice term for a desert. And that brother was in the desert for 40 years, isolated from everybody he knew before. And I think sometimes God isolates us from family, from friends, to teach us a lesson. And God isolated me from my brothers and sisters for a period of 14 years, 4 months, and 14 days at one point in my life.
Mm.
And now my siblings and I are closer than we've ever been. And I pray the same for my daughters, that this isolation is for a purpose, that God has a deep, long-lasting lesson he wants to teach me. Now, I can curse God and I can fight God and I can rebel, and I can get used to this.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can be hopeful. I can pray every minute that my daughters will grow closer to God, that my grandson will grow closer to God. In so doing, that we grow closer together. And I think the secret to us during these storms, times of isolation, is that secret is to be thankful every day that God thinks I'm important enough to teach me a hard lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be teachable enough to learn it.
Sometimes though, I have similar experiences in yours, and I just sometimes think that it's so, then again, you told me life was fair. I can't recall anybody who said life is fair. It just seems like it's the treatment of us as fathers just seems to be unequal to that is given to mothers. It's like, here you are saying, hey, I'm alienated from my daughters. You know, I if I did something wrong, I accept that fully. I'm fully accountable for that. I'm here to make amends. But if you were a woman saying that, people, I think the immediate emotional reaction would be, well, that's ridiculous. You can't have children from their mama.
Mm.
You know, they'd want to intervene and say, hey, what's wrong with you? You're not saying anything to your mama? Man, they don't do that for us. I mean, I don't know, brother. I don't know. Maybe I got that wrong. Maybe I got that twisted. But,
Mm.
what are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I think some of that's cultural in the sense that there are a lot of men, I think, in our society who long ago abdicated their roles as fathers. There are men who do that. I say a lot. I certainly don't think that it's a majority. I think some men may abdicate their roles, and that is so distasteful that we're often lumped into one group. That men must be somehow without that motherly instinct, then we just abdicate our roles loosely. And I don't believe that. But I also will say that yeah, my viewpoint's changed over the years. When I was 35 years old, looked like the world, had the world by the tail, and I couldn't be stopped. And I found out differently. God's discipline was very clear to me later on in life. So I don't have time, Corbin. I don't think at pushing 61 years old, I've already lived a long life. I don't know how many days I have left. I do know that I don't have time for that conflict anymore, whether it's in my own mind or with the mother of my children or between men and women or anything else about this life we've been blessed to live. I'm in the fourth quarter and I need to make this quarter the best one yet. And go back to Steve Farrar in that book, Finishing Strong, that we happen to be studying right now in one of our groups, the one you and I share on Tuesday nights. And I am absolutely passionate about making this a strong, Christ-filled, mission-filled, use my time wisely, follow those directions, be teachable to God kind of fourth quarter. And I've surrounded myself day after day after day with the help of a lot of Christian brothers, a very effective and strong Christian mentor, 2 home churches, and I will never take another step on this earth until God calls me home. I won't take another step without some strong Christian brothers like you pouring into me. And that's the blessing, Corbin, of this period of isolation. Yeah, it's isolation from my daughters, my grandson. Yet it's a blessing to have such a strong personalized lesson every day from God. And I choose to treat it as a lesson from God. And I won't be finished learning until he's finished teaching. And as Brother Jimmy Rollins, who is a pastor in a church in Annapolis, Maryland, Union Church, he says, if you're not good yet, God's not done yet. And brother, I'm not good yet till he brings my daughters and my grandson back. But I've been blessed with an incredible Christian wife and a lot of brothers around me who just pour into me day after day and with patience and care and love. And, that blessed beyond reason.
Well, amen. Brother, we need to wrap up. But before we do, I want to ask you the crazy question. I'll give you the scenario first. You're sitting down with some young guy. He's about 21, 22 years old. He just got married, had his first child. Maybe the child's like 8, 9 months old. What are you going to say to him about fatherhood?
Two things. One is stay close to God. Stay close to God. Make Jesus your Lord and Savior. The second thing I'm going to share with that young brother is you make sure that you're close to your child, you're close to your family, because they don't need your money. They don't need your work ethic. They don't need your fame. They don't need your fortune. They don't need all of the trappings, a bigger house, bigger shiny car. They don't need all that. They need you. Make sure you give them that. Short, simple lesson right there, 2 parts to it.
There you go. Brother, I appreciate your time. When this is edited, I will let you know. And I just want to say to my listeners, hey, please support the podcast. I need any type of financial support you can offer so I can continue doing this. And by this, I mean reaching out to people like Brother Dan and talking to them and having them share with us. Because you know what, guys? Speaking to fathers, my baby was born in August of 2000. No one handed me a manual, man. I had a manual, man, when I bought my car. They gave me a driver's manual.
Yeah.
Dude, they didn't give me a manual for my little. They didn't give me no manual, man. I'm still upset about that. It's like, oh my, what do I do? How do I do this? And I think Brother Dan would be among the first to say, you heard what he said. Get close to God, stay close to God. And I'm sure he would, he would also say, hey, get with a good group of other Christian men, and share. You share with them, they share with you. You pour into them, they pour into you. Because I'm going to tell you something, and brother, I know you can testify to this. Some of the greatest joys, I mean, just pure joy that I've ever experienced was because of my little girl. But at the same time, some of the things where I just hit rock bottom was over my little girl. This father thing ain't easy, man. Shoot, it ain't easy. Man. Brother, thank you so much. I will be in touch, okay?
Hey, I respect, appreciate, and love you, brother. Thank you for your time.
You bet.